So, last year I took a month-long solo trip to Japan. For 3 weeks I travelled all over the country. The beautiful and quiet autumn colours of Nikko, the wintry frontier of Hokkaido, big cities, small cities, and Japan's rural countryside. I had done so much that I'd never done before, saw new places, tried new things, and learned so much. And improved my Japanese tenfold. Now, with my rail pass expired, I only had 1 week remaining in Japan before I had to go back to Australia, and I'd be spending that in my favourite city in the world, Tokyo. So, after leaving the countryside of Shiga Prefecture, I arrived smack bang in the middle of the biggest, busiest city in the world. It would have been quite the shock, but 3 weeks into my trip I was kind of used to the sudden changes in location at this point, so I wasn't too bothered. I hopped on the Choro line and was on my way. For this week, I'd be staying in Ogikubo, which is right on the edge of Tokyo City itself before we reach the other cities within Tokyo Prefecture, such as Kichijoji and Hachioji. A bit confusing, I know. I had booked a whole studio apartment for myself, complete with a kitchen, Western-style bed, and a TV, real luxuries, yes. Since I was going to be there for a week, I wanted a bit more space and privacy compared to, say, a hostel or hotel room. Plus, I wanted to feel like I was living in Japan, even if only for a little bit. Hence the not-so-central location, but it was only about a 15-minute walk away from a train station in either direction, so it was pretty convenient. For my first full day, I was a bit dumbfounded on what to do. Since most places I stayed at, I was only there for at most 3 days, so with a full week, I didn't have to cram everything into a single day. I leisurely spent it walking around Shibuya and Harajuku, seeing some of my favourite shops, the very first apartment I stayed back in 2014, and it was interesting to see how much had changed over the course of 9 years since I first visited Japan, and how quickly it can change even over the course of a month. You see, on my first day in Japan 3 weeks prior, I was in Shibuya and my phone was dying, so I went into the McDonald's there that I had been to many times over my previous trips for a bit of nostalgia and comfort food. It was nice to be there reminiscing over times I'd go there with my family after spending a day out at Disneyland, or travelling around a bunch of different spots in Tokyo. Fast forward to 3 weeks later, I was shocked to find that the whole building was just gone. It had been completely demolished, and there was a comedic space where it used to be, like it was just deleted off the face of the earth. Tokyo really is a constantly evolving city, huh? Day 2. I wasn't too sure on what to do, but I decided to go to Akihabara to indulge my nerdier side a bit. Akihabara isn't really the best place to go nowadays for things like games, anime, or manga, but it can still be fun to visit. I looked around a bit and ended up accidentally walking to Ueno Park. I didn't realize they were that close to each other. One of the biggest changes for me on this trip compared to my past ones was that now Japan felt a lot smaller. Whether that's because I'm taller now and have longer legs, or maybe because I've been all over the country, but I was surprised at how close things were to each other. Afterwards, I decided to catch a train to Ikebukuro to check out the Mega Pokemon Center, the biggest one in Japan, by the way. But it was a Saturday, so it was incredibly busy. I remembered the store being busy in the past, but it was almost suffocating on a weekend. The cashier there spoke fluent English and was talking to me about Pokemon, which left me a bit in shock because I was so used to not hearing people speak English for the past 3 weeks. So I only bought a few little things, and I ended the day getting steak for dinner in Shinjuku, because I hadn't eaten red meat or vegetables in about a week or two. Day 3, I decided to explore a bit more around the area I was staying in. One of the reasons I chose to stay in Ogikubo in particular is because it's a part of the Suginami ward, and Suginami is low-key the birthplace of anime. It's been home to many anime studios, and it has a rich history in it. You wouldn't really see it advertised anywhere, but as an animator and artist myself, I wanted to see the streets that decades worth of animators walk down, and to see the areas that served as the inspiration for so many stories. So I walked around the back streets, eventually making my way to the Suginami Animation Museum. It's only a small museum, but it's free and the staff are super passionate. They had lots of good props, drawings, and signatures from some of the best animators and directors in the medium, animation workshops, and a really well illustrated history of anime throughout the years, complete with an audio guide if you'd like. They even had a limited Spy Family exhibit with lots of original artwork and Ekonte pages from the show. If you're an artist yourself or just a big fan of the medium, I'd really recommend it. Afterwards, I was in the mood for looking at old anime memorabilia, so I headed to Nakano Broadway. If you're not aware, Nakano Broadway is like Akihabara, but better. It's a big shopping mall filled with secondhand goods, specialty shops ranging across all different topics, but a lot of them will be anime, manga, or game related. It's almost like a museum in itself with so many nooks and crannies to explore. You can spend hours here, and I did, trying to find fun gifts for my friends. Plus, if you're a Digimon fan, you might recognize it as being the hub area in the Cyber Sleuth games. Day 4. Continuing with the animation trend, today I went to the Studio Ghibli Museum, definitely one of my most anticipated stops on my whole trip. I've been a few times in the past, but I was nowhere near the Ghibli connoisseur that I am now. Because I was already in the animation city, I was only a short walk away. I got to properly explore Inokashira Park while I was waiting, which for some reason I never did in the past, but it's really great, and the museum itself was amazing. Much better than the park in my opinion, but it's probably more aligned to someone like me anyway. It's such a fun and interesting building with little bridges, weird shaped rooms and doorways here and there, complete with spiral staircases and a rooftop garden. The building was designed by Goro Miyazaki, Hayao son, who was an architect and directed a few of the films, and the attention to detail is immaculate. If you're a big Ghibli fan like I am, there are definitely some deeper cut details here and there that you can appreciate, right down to the ticket which features small cell frames from the films. You aren't allowed to take pictures inside, although I secretly snuck one from the bathroom, so I won't go too much into detail about some of the exhibits, because that would go against the museum's intent, but there was also one in particular that I was enthralled with, and that was the Birth of a Film exhibit. It's a few rooms you can walk through, designed to almost be like the visual representation of an animator's mind, with ideas all over the walls and things everywhere. It's like if you walked into a Ghibli film that doesn't exist, but still feels familiar. All lining the walls are artworks and sketches from Ghibli stuff. I spent so long studying each drawing, it really was magical. I even got to see a short film I hadn't seen before, being Mr. Doe and the Egg Princess. It was a treat. Then afterwards you can relax at the Mugiwara Boshi Straw Hat Cafe before you dive into the busy gift shop. Bonus points if you spot the cat return secret near there. I spent a good little while at the Ghibli Museum and spent the evening afterwards nearby in the Kichijoji area, which I'd never been to before, but I recognized it because it's where you hang out with Akechi in Persona 5 Royal. Oh no. I have no life. Day 5. Today was a rainier day, so I decided to go to the National Museum of Nature and Science in Ueno Park. I like learning about zoology and paleontology a lot, and unfortunately, Australia has a big lack of dinosaur bones compared to other places, so I was excited to see what a global city such as Tokyo had to offer. And I was thoroughly impressed. There were so many taxidermied animals and fossils of animals I'd never been able to see otherwise. It was so educational, and all around it's a great experience. It was pretty busy due to the rain, and there were a lot of school kids on excursions, but luckily I'm tall, so I could see over the crowds and still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I'd love to go again in the future and do lots of life drawing. A smaller, less eventful day, for sure, but one that was thoroughly enjoyable for me, and I was able to indulge myself in my interests. In my spare time, I often waste a lot of it staring longingly at Japan on Google Maps, and something I've wanted to do for years was to walk across Tokyo. Not really for any particular reason, more so just as a bit of a challenge for myself, and because I thought it would be fun. So, on day 6, I walked across Tokyo from Shibuya Station to Tokyo Station. It's only about 6 kilometers, not really that big of a walk, but when the public transport is just so convenient, you don't really have a reason to do it. So I doubt many tourists have ever done it. I'm really glad that I did though. It was strangely one of the best things I did on the whole trip. I got to discover a lot of new areas that I didn't really know about, such as Meiji Jingumae and its amazing Ginkgo Avenue. I got to see areas that I had been through on the train in the past, in mere seconds, but was now able to properly take my time exploring them. Walking through the city and seeing iconic spots in the near distance made it all feel a lot smaller, but not in a disappointing way at all. It made it feel much more known and homely to me, like I was a local. This once huge, daunting city was becoming much more familiar to me, one that I had come to know. I could now point out major landmarks easily. I could tell where things were so much easily and navigate all the train lines without difficulty. Day 7. My last full day was pretty similar, honestly. I tried to purposely get myself lost by getting off at Ebisu and walking around without checking my map. But because I can read Japanese, and because I was now much more familiar with Tokyo, I kept figuring out where I was, and even without a map, I ended up back at Shibuya where I started the day before. But in the back of my head, I had this lingering sadness knowing this was my last full day in Japan. I then spent the end of that day walking around near where I was staying, quite sad to leave Japan, watching the trains and just strolling along the river, watching people live their lives as the sun was beginning to set. I wasn't quite ready to go. I ended up finding myself in a park with a big open field and view of the sky. The winter sky was setting, my last one before going back to summer in Australia. I ended up reflecting a lot on my journey. I had gone so far out of my comfort zone. This trip was like nothing I'd ever done before. I travelled across the world by myself, managed to navigate in a foreign country and language without difficulty. All the studying I had done in years prior had finally paid off. I saw snow for the first time, met lots of people, got sick and managed to survive, and really got to know Tokyo. I was proud of what I'd done and how I'd grown. I'm naturally a very anxious person who has a lot of insecurities, and I stress about the past, present, and future all mutually. I genuinely wasn't sure if this trip was something I could do, but now I was at the end of it. I had faced difficulties and challenges, but persevered, became more resilient, and grew from them. After being the foreigner that stands out and having people stare at me, I was no longer really afraid of what people thought of me, and was really just content being myself. Before this trip, I was worried that I might not like Japan as much as I used to. After all, it had been 5 years, so much had changed. I was no longer a child, I had grown up, moved from home, gotten a degree, and I was worried that I'd grown out of it or something. But in fact, I discovered the opposite. Because I'd gone to Japan from such a young age, it left such an impact on me. It shaped me into the person I am now, unknowingly. I had spent the majority of my life learning the language after all. Most importantly though, I was finally comfortable to be myself. I felt confident, I felt happy. Yes, it was sad to leave, but as I sat there watching planes fly past and kids and families play in the park, I knew that I wouldn't be gone for long. That's where I'll end this video and this series. My month-long trip across Japan really meant a lot to me. It's easily the best thing I've ever done, and I'm glad I was able to share it all with you. I'll be going again at the end of this year, and there'll be plenty of trips in the future, and I hope to share them all with you as well. So I just want to say thank you for watching this series.